Good morning, good day, friends and YouTube fans. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy to chat with you guys again about some increasing chances for heavier snow in the eastern United States. If you're like me in the Carolinas, you're like, oh, that's not going to impact me. I don't want to listen. Well, just listen anyway, because I'm going to tell you guys what. We do definitely see some colder weather on track to invade the United States and make its way south and east again in the month of February. And for some of you, that'll even be sooner than that in January across the southern plains. And we have an active storm track over the southern United States. The combination of cold and moist flow out of the Gulf can mean some very interesting weather. And I want you guys to sit down and listen to what I have to say, because I'm going to be able to go into a lot more detail here in the next couple of weeks about what we're expecting. But today, we are talking about four storms in the near future, right through the next 2 weeks, through February the 3rd. And the storm track over the last month has been annoyingly north and west for those of you on the East Coast. I get it. Look, I hear all of the comments. I see all the comments out there, and I'm with you guys. It really hasn't felt like winter yet. In fact, today we're talking about record warmth in parts of the Carolinas and Southeast, and even up the East Coast, it's going to be pretty close to record warmth. But that's going to change here as we've got a series of storm systems along with an advance of colder weather, which continues to get deeper and deeper as we get into the very end of the month of January and into February. At the same time, we've got high pressure off the coast. I didn't put it on my map, but it's flexing its muscles, and that's why it's so warm. And we're going to be in a classic tug of war between cold to the north and west and warmth to the south and east. And in between the two is where the storm track's going to go. And just to the north and west of that storm track, with all the moisture in play here in the eastern U.S. that we see, we could be in for heavy snow for some here in the Northeast and the Great Lakes. So what the graphic is showing you guys is we've seen the storm track across the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes over the past couple of weeks. Everything has been cutting up to the north and east and then reforming off the East Coast. And all the snow's been across New England and parts of the Midwest, with a lot of snow that had just fallen here across parts of the plains. As we get into the weekend and early next week, that storm track shifts south into the Gulf states and then jumps up the East Coast. And then as we get towards the end of the month and into February, it goes even farther south and east with a storm track that is going to be a better track for those of you that want to see snow on the East Coast. So you have to be a little bit patient with me, but I do think when push comes to shove, the cold air is going to win out. And areas I've got circled in the darker gray here have a chance of seeing multiple feet of snow between now and about February 3rd and beyond. So first, I do want to talk about the severe weather from yesterday. Fortunately, I was wrong. We were all wrong in that this was not a very big outbreak of severe weather. And you know what? I'm going to be thanking God here that it wasn't that bad, because we've seen so much destruction down south in the last month. I'm glad that certainly that things didn't quite play out the way that they could have. The indices were high. The amount of wind aloft was high, but the instability was not. We just had a little bit too much cloud cover, and as a result, just some heavy rain, a lot of lightning, and one report of a tornado in Arkansas. But for the Southeast, I'm very appreciative that it wasn't as bad as it could have been, because even though I'm here to talk about severe and extreme weather with you guys, I'm human and I sympathize with people that go through dangerous storms and lose loved ones and property. So I'm glad that this outbreak has not materialized the way that I think it could have. So having said that, we are going to see a little bit of surprise severe weather today across Ohio and far eastern Indiana. I did talk about this a little bit yesterday. I do think this chance could actually shift a little farther south and east towards the Pittsburgh area this evening, but as we get after dark, we are going to lose instability. So this includes much of central and northern Ohio, with the risk for tornadoes and some locally strong winds and hail. 15% chance that we will see damaging winds, and a 2% chance of damaging tornadoes in central parts of Ohio and into northern Ohio as well. I think this could shift a little bit farther east. If you look at the HRRR model, this is the high resolution rapid refresh model, you see rain and showers moving east across Pennsylvania this morning, and then additional showers and some thunderstorms will be firing up in eastern Indiana and western Ohio around 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we're getting to within about an hour or so of dusk. But we do see the potential for a few supercell type storms. They'll be low topped, forming here in places like Findlay and down just to the west of Columbus and all the way down to Wilmington, Ohio. This is 5 o'clock today. Here's 6 o'clock. moving right through Columbus and Toledo and up towards Sandusky. 7 o'clock, we start to see kind of more of an area of just some rain and thunderstorms moving towards New Philadelphia here, Ohio, and then 8 o'clock towards Wheeling and Morgantown and Pittsburgh. But if we look real quick at the severe weather indices, the significant tornado parameter for maybe a stronger tornado, EF2 type tornado, those numbers are not zero. In fact, they're up to about 3 and 4 here over central parts of Ohio, around 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 8. And even, I don't know why this is happening, but even in the far southwest Pennsylvania, an isolated tornado certainly still remains possible before things kind of die off. Yeah, the indices are higher here in Virginia, but nothing's going to be falling. There'll just be some wind shear. So I'm not too worried about that. But this is just something I think you guys need to keep an eye on if you are watching me from parts of the upper Ohio Valley here late this afternoon into tonight. Severe weather chances return to the southeast. Notice this area shifts south and east of the one we just had yesterday. I think there could be some localized strong winds, maybe a few tornadoes. And I'm highlighting southern Georgia and northern Florida for this. This would be on Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, ending Monday morning. If we go off into the future beyond that, no threat for severe weather, but the following storm could produce some severe weather across Alabama, northwest Florida, maybe into Georgia as well. And this would be on Tuesday into Tuesday night. So that's what I'll be tracking for you guys. The 4 storms. Well, here's storm number 1 across the central part of the country. Storm number 2 is dropping down into the Pacific Northwest. That's the last one for California, by the way, today. So storm 1 moves northeast and then flattens out and goes east. It kind of gets blocked here. There's not really a 50-50 low here to draw much cold air in, but we will see snow across New England during the day tomorrow on Friday. Next storm drops into the Four Corners region, and then that one is going to cut up towards the Great Lakes. A little bit farther south, though, than what we've seen. We've seen storms heading in this direction for the most part, and then dropping south and east. This one's going to be heading up to the north and east. So early next week, this is Sunday night, we see the threat for rain and thunderstorms, some severe in the southeast. There'll be wintry weather here in the Great Lakes. The next storm is just a hair behind it. So 1, 2 here. So this is storm 1, this is storm 2, this is storm 3, and then a ridge builds into the west. And that's going to dry California out, but it's going to pick up a more active southern jet stream here than what we've seen. So this storm number 3 comes up across the deep south, and looking at how strong the upper level low is, I do think there could be enough instability and enough cold air from aloft being drawn down to see some wintry weather here in the southern plains. Big question mark is, it will be North Texas or will it be Oklahoma and Kansas? That is still yet to be determined, but something I will be watching for you guys on Tuesday. So storm 3 heads up, and this is a great pattern if you like to see East Coast snow. This would be Thursday into Friday of next week, Wednesday night into Thursday and Friday. But again, with this strong region of high pressure here aloft across the northern Atlantic, there's not really any blocking up here in Greenland. This is a progressive storm, so it's probably not going to be an East Coast nor'easter. There's really not enough blocking to get it to come up. Behind that, there will be a 4th storm. You can see it on the European. This is the 29th of January, and that one is probably going to eventually go farther south and east. And the reason for that is that we are going to see more of a 50-50 low that's going to eventually move eastward. It's past 240 hours, so certainty level not super high. But the one thing I do see that gives me the impression that cold air is going to be able to attack farther south and east than it has in some time is this strengthening ridge here off to in the Gulf of Alaska and off the west coast of British Columbia. This is definitely something that allows more widespread cold to advance. But if you're like me and you live in the Carolinas, or even better yet, if you live in Florida, this does not guarantee we're locked into a cold, wintry pattern. You can see there's still a strong region of high pressure here over the southwest Atlantic, and that is flexing its muscles. And because it's doing so, we have ourselves quite the battle zone somewhere in here. And the warm air is going to win out in some places, but the cold air is right behind it. Where that happens, we may see what could be a more favorable track for some southern snow or some southern wintry precipitation. But the big question mark is, when will that happen, and how far south does that advance in early February? Could it be the Gulf Coast? Possibly, but has it been yet? No. It could be more likely Tennessee into Virginia and North Carolina. So the cold air is going to seep down here, and we could see something coming up the southeast coast. That means maybe some icy precipitation somewhere here in the Carolinas and Virginia and northern Georgia, but that would not be probably until the very end of January or the beginning of February. And again, I am speculating still. There's not enough evidence for this to be a widespread likelihood of an event happening. Temperature anomalies are very warm today. We'll see near record warmth here in the Carolinas into Georgia. It'll be quite warm as well across the Ohio Valley. You see all this warm air bottled up over northern Canada. Meanwhile, the western U.S. remains below average with all that snowpack here in the west. That is feeding that cold air. However, the cold air is not making too much of an advance yet to the south and east. This is this Sunday, and it does get colder in Texas and eventually in the Gulf Coast region, but this is fleeting cold where it's just chilly for a couple days, and then temperatures warm right back up. Now, this is the middle of next week, and you can see more of a cold weather pattern starting to take over central northern Canada, and the warmth beginning to intensify in western Canada and Alaska. When you see something like this, you now see kind of more of the ability for cold air to attack the central part of the country. Not at the magnitude of what we saw before Christmas, but certainly this will be colder air than we've seen in quite some time this month. And as we get to the end of next week, we see much of the eastern United States has a good shot at seeing some below average temperatures, but it's not going to last as it warms right back up at the end of the month. However, when I'm looking at the European ensemble and I see this at the end of the month of January, a much bigger area of cold taking over the western U.S., I see something that resembles a little bit more to a lesser scale of what we saw here back at the middle of December, and that's more available cold air to come in here for the month of February. So that's what I'm going to be watching for you guys in February. The extended European weeklies show this is the beginning of February, and the cold doesn't really extend too far south and east yet. But as we get later into the month of February, we see a little bit more of an advance of colder than average temperatures into the eastern United States. So for you to say that winter is over in the east, what I see on the European would definitely disagree with you guys in that it's going to be a colder than average temperature pattern here at the very end of next month and possibly carrying into March. We could have a situation here where winter holds on longer than maybe what you would expect in the month of March. But again, we're still speculating with this being 6 weeks out. A lot can certainly change between now and then. All right, so now let's bring things back into the near term. We can see storm number 1 in the Great Lakes. Some heavy snow still falling this morning across Wisconsin and Michigan. We see thunderstorms popping up this afternoon in Ohio and eastern Indiana, tracking east. And we also see some snow and ice over the interior of New England. That advances kind of eastward, where we will have a region of heavy snow setting up. In the southeast, we're not going to see much in the way of thunderstorms here. The support for storms begins to crumble as the day wears on, so this will be pretty much a dry frontal passage. We'll have record warmth today, and then it gets cooler tomorrow with yet another wave. This is storm number 2 developing in the Central Plains over the weekend. This is going to bring you wet weather on the Gulf Coast, maybe some heavy rain and thunderstorms, and then possibly some severe weather later Sunday into Sunday night here across southeast Alabama, northern Florida, and into Georgia, and maybe the coastal Carolinas by Sunday night. In the northeast, this will be a more significant snow a little farther south and east, but the low track is coming right through the Delmarva and right up into southern New England. And where that low goes, it's still too warm for snow. So it looks like we miss out on snow this weekend across the big cities of the Northeast. And instead, we have a heavy interior snowstorm. Sounds like deja vu. There will be mountain snowfall as well on the backside of this storm for Monday. Storm number 3 is now taking shape here over Oklahoma and Kansas. And you can see more of the blue lines here, meaning colder air advancing southward. It's not a very strong cold air mass, but it's cold enough to produce some snow. The European, I'm going to show you in a minute, actually has more upper level support for snow farther south than the GFS does. But nonetheless, we see cold air coming down into Texas and maybe some rain and thunderstorms in East Texas for Monday night, Tuesday morning. This storm track is a little farther south. That means Chicago and northern and central Indiana have a good shot at seeing some accumulating snow Tuesday into Tuesday night. It also means more heavy rain and thunderstorms for the southeast, maybe severe weather again Tuesday night. And interior parts of the northeast are again looking at heavy snow, starting maybe as a bit of ice. The question mark here is, where does this low end up? Could it be farther off the East Coast? Certainly. That would mean a better chance for seeing some snow here in the big cities of the Northeast. Could it be farther west and be another cutter? That is also possible. So right now, not a slam dunk yet for the big cities of the Northeast seeing anything but rain, but possibly we could see a little snow on the backside. As that moves away, we'll have lake effect snow bands here, instability snow showers, and mountain snow showers for the second half of next week. It'll be colder and mainly dry here in the southeast at the end of next week. The GFS does create some interesting weather in South Texas. We'll have to wait and see about that. But notice we start to see more of a supply of cold dropping south and east. There's an Arctic boundary next weekend moving into the northern United States, and that is going to sweep south and east. The big question mark is this a polar vortex or a piece of it? And certainly that could happen and drop south. We also see the potential for the southern jet staying active in the south and east. This run of the GFS shows a little bit of light snow in Atlanta and into the Carolinas by the end of the month. Again, I would not put a lot of faith in it because the model run before it did not show that. But this is the potential for a significant East Coast storm coming up at the very end of the month of January, beginning of February. And I know I'm hearing from you guys in the Northeast that think this winter is a dud. You just haven't had a significant East Coast storm yet. We abbreviate that SECX or SECS. So I understand you guys are very much SECS deprived. You can say that out loud. I'm not going to, but hey, man, I like to joke about it too. Let's just say that. All right. So anyway, the pattern is much more favorable for chilly weather and winter weather here in the Northeast. We do warm back up though in February, but look, there's definitely more cold air spilling down from the east part of the Rockies and Canada into the northern plains. So we're definitely not done with winter. We are just still kind of back and forth here in the southeast and up the eastern seaboard. But there's a lot more cold air in Canada than what we've seen in January. With the Pacific jet turned off, the dry air pattern here in California, and that means we are likely to see storm after storm here in the eastern United States. So snow lovers, you're gonna have to wait your turn, but it is coming. The European model I'm going to show you, I'm going to take it through a little bit faster here. The storm track pretty much agrees on storm 1. Storm 2, notice that the track is a little bit farther to the south. We may see a little bit of ice front running here, the rain in the Appalachians over the weekend. Still some heavy rain in the southeast. As we get into Tuesday, the European is much farther south with the upper low and brings some snow to Texas. And this could be a heavy wet snowfall all the way to near Dallas and to the west around Lubbock and into southern Oklahoma. So this is more extreme than the GFS model. And it has that low pressure track right on here through the southeast. But look how much it is cutting up to the north, trying to make its way west of the Appalachians again, meaning that this is probably going to be a rain event for the big East Coast cities. But it's very possible that this low ends up 50 miles or 100 miles farther east offshore and that heavy snow advances down the I-95. So no guarantees yet at this point. Storm number 3 behind it that is storm number 3. Storm number 4 behind it is not yet within range here. That's dropping down and will be coming up at the very end of the month of January, beginning of February. I did show you guys this already. I like to look at snowfall totals. This is the next 10 days total snow from the GFS, and you can see a very good chance of accumulating snow across much of the Great Lakes region. There will be some holes in it, and I'm talking to you in southern Indiana and Ohio. There will be some mountain snow, maybe some light snow in Tennessee and Arkansas, and the heavy snow starts picking up when we get into northern lower Michigan, as well as getting into the interior of New York and Pennsylvania and western Maryland. And numbers could get over 30 inches in parts of the mountains of New England into New Brunswick of Canada. The European, through this time frame, doesn't have quite as much, but it still highlights an area of significant snow over the next 3 to 4 storms here across the interior of the Northeast and the upper Great Lakes. It actually has a better shot at seeing snow from Texas through Arkansas and into the Ohio River Valley. So the model I just showed you, the GFS, says the snow band from these next couple of storms is farther north. The European says it's farther south. It may end up being in between. If you're in Indiana and Ohio, that's good news for you. If you're in Philly, New York, Baltimore, and DC, this is again a little bit too close to see any kind of significant snow, but just a shift east by 50 miles and you guys can see significant snow as well. The Canadian model goes nuts here in New England with 30 to 40 inches of snow, and it definitely is not quite as far south here across Arkansas, and certainly doesn't show the threat for anything across the majority of Virginia, the Carolinas. And then the Icon model doesn't go out as far, but you can see big snowstorm here over Missouri and Illinois, and that can eventually advance eastward next Thursday into Friday. Across the Northeast, it has some snow getting close to Boston, New York, and Philly as well. So the Icon has a little bit of a different look than the other models, and at this point, I'm not putting a lot of stock into it. The ensembles from the GFS, I do want to show you guys this snowfall here Again, Storm 1 is a little bit too far north in New England. Storm 2, likely from the Great Lakes into the northeast. Storm 3, farther south and east. Again, good snow potential in the northeast. And Storm 4 is coming up here in February, and you can see there's just too much disagreement on whether that will be an East Coast storm here. You can see there's maybe some chance here in the Mid-Atlantic region in Philly for some snow for the beginning of February, but there's just too much spread at that point. As we get a little bit, I think I already showed you guys. Yeah, I showed you guys this already. But anyway, the certainty level of any one place getting a big storm, anywhere from Boston on down into the Carolinas, is still too low. That point I do want to make for you guys. But again, on the graphic, you guys can see that the storm track is eventually shifting a little bit more south and east with each potential storm here. And even though it's going to be warm for much of the time here in Florida, we still see some cold air coming your way as well. But the main points I want to bring are that we are likely going to see heavy amounts of snow in the next 3 weeks in this region. Potential for some heavier snow maybe in this region here next week, and some mountain snow again. And then it's kind of a question mark on the eastern seaboard, as well as across the Piedmont of the Carolinas, Tennessee, and North Texas. We will likely see heavy rain and rounds of severe weather and maybe flooding across this region. And the coastal Carolinas are likely to see some rain. And western and central Texas are in a drought, but we could see maybe a shot at some snow in northern central Texas and some rain across deep south Texas as we get later into next week, towards the middle and second part of next week. So lots to unpack for you guys, but I hope you stay safe out there. I hope you're rooting on the snow like I am. I just kind of want to see an end of the people crying that it's the end of winter, because I just showed you guys that it looks like it's going to be colder than average into March. And so we are definitely not finished with winter. We're just getting a bit of a break from it. If you could like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be able to pin down more of these storm tracks and more of where I think the heavy rain, the heavy snow, and the chance for severe weather is going to occur over the next couple of weeks. Please subscribe so that you can't miss any of that information. And I'll try to give you a few posts during. Anyway, thank you for joining Josh's Severe Weather today. I really appreciate y'all's time. I would like to give glory to God, my Savior, Jesus Christ. And without him, I don't believe I could be doing what I'm doing, and that is sharing the weather with you all, being called as a Christian man to share faith with you as well. And I know some of you may not be believers, and that is perfectly okay. I was not either for the first 30 years of my life, but I was introduced to God and found him, and now I live a Christian life. And I want to read a quick verse for you guys. If you're still with me, that is from Romans 12. Romans 12:1, a living sacrifice. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We each have different gifts, according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. As a Christian man, I believe I've got several different gifts, but I don't have them all. I don't think any of you do as well. But basically, when Paul tells the Roman church this, he says, without you, the body is not complete. So I'm offering you guys a chance to become part of the body of believers that I am, to live in Christ every day. We each have separate gifts. Mine, is to be a meteorologist. It is to discuss weather that can be extreme and potentially life-threatening. It is to help other folks see that. It is also, though, to encourage and share my faith with you. And I believe that this channel is the way to do that. And I just want to pray with you if you are struggling in your faith, or if you do not have the belief system that I do, but maybe are considering it. I would love to pray for you. If you're going through a difficult time, I would love to pray for you if you are encouraged and want to remain that way. And I want to pray for you if you want to change. So feel free to leave any prayer requests with your comment here under this video. I realize that this is a weather channel, but it is also a place for me to bring people together into one community. And that is what's most pleasing to God, not conforming to the pattern of this world by having a title, by having a career path, but be transformed by renewing my mind in Christ and staying in the Word every day. So thank you so much for joining me today. I apologize for the little bit of a video glitch just a little while ago. I'm going to do my best to merge it, but I've got to get off to work and take care of my family. But I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. God bless you.